All right, so thank you. So we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. So Bob, I was mentioning that why are you so specifically inclined to share what cyberpsychology is? What makes that more important than just like regular psychology? Or what makes it so different?
Well, Michelle, kind of ever since our ancestors kind of started coming into awareness many, many millennia ago, there have really been two realms where psychological events occur. There's the conscious realm of the actual world and the unconscious realm of dreams and fantasy. And now, after all those millennia, thousands and thousands of years, digital technology has added a third realm alongside the existing realms of the conscious and unconscious, right? So like now there's a third place where we can have it. This is huge. And especially, more and more of our experiences are going to be happening in these digital realms. And cyber psychology is a term that we have that refers to the study of that psychological space that's kind of mediated by computers and computer networks. And so as technology continues to evolve, understanding kind of the psychology of the digital world becomes increasingly crucial. And it's different, just like the conscious world is different than the unconscious world, the digital realm is different. But we have to understand it, as therapists, that's where clients are going to be. And then as people, who are in that world, how do we understand and make sense of what's happening to us there? So that's why I think this is so important.
I see, I see. Thank you so much for sharing with that. And then on to the next conversation is that you do emphasize a lot in your work about the world of fantasy, and then you point out really good four main bullet points. So you explain how the first one you researched a lot about there's a mix of the actual and fantasy world. You also mentioned how there's some sort of identity in formation and disinhabitation. You also pointed out that there is some sort of understanding and fine line between online and offline identities. And then finally, your research does emphasize a lot in sense of time. So if you could please explain to us what all these mean and what is the importance and how does it relate back to cyber psychology?
Well, yeah, well, let's just start with identity. Um, well, first, let's go back. Like how is it the way it's like the world of fantasy and dreams? It's not really bound by physics, right? You can be in a virtual world where you can fly, you can change shapes, seeds can look weird. So in that sense, it's like our world of fantasy, right? Not like the actual world. Another way that it's like the world of fantasy is kind of the way that we form our identity. And if you think about it, our identity in this actual world has been formed over our entire lifetime, right? In a kind of a mainly unconscious process, right? We never think, oh, I'm forming my identity now. But in cyberspace, we can have multiple identities, right? For any game or realm that we're in, we can have a different identity, and it comes pretty quickly. It doesn't take years. It's something that we can just choose, and we get to consciously design it. As an adult, we get to design kind of what we present, what we share, what we don't share. And those online identities that we have, they can be very diverse and fluid. So we can explore and express way beyond the constraints of the physical world. However, this anonymity leads to what the author and psychologist John Spooler calls the disinhibited self, right? Which means we don't have any inhibitions. So we can throw off both the positive inhibitions that kind of keep our anger and primal desires in check, kind of as well as the negative inhibitions that tell us that we need to be a certain way. So actually every individual has the chance to express like who they truly are, something less than who we are, something more, or something completely different, right? So a lot of fluidity in our identity, and we can just change it really quickly. It
Mhm.
also challenges kind of our traditional notions of time and presence and relationship dynamics. When we look on the internet, the past and present are kind of there at the same time, right? Like if I do an internet search on somebody and it shows me things about them, I don't know whether that was from yesterday or 20 years ago. So there's kind of that compacting of time. Um, so it's in that sense, it's like our fantasy world, and then it's like the actual world in that it's kind of like a product of consciousness. So we create it consciously. Um, so kind of unlike dreams, which emerge from our unconscious without any conscious direction, when you enter a digital space, you're making a conscious decision to participate in a manufactured world. So in that sense, it's a lot like consciousness. It's a lot like what we do conscious, right? Because it's all deliberate, unlike the fantasy world. And also, if you think about it, the conscious and unconscious minds have evolved over a long time, eons. But again, the digital virtual has been here kind of less than 100 years. So it's very new, but still very full and rich. So those are kind of some of the ways that it's different and will provide challenges for us.
Mhm. In some ways, and what do you mean by challenges? Do you mean in like a bad way, or do you mean challenges in that if we overcome these said challenges, it will be a good thing for people to be aware about these conscious and unconscious mind?
Oh yeah, definitely to overcome them, to be willing to think about those things, to think about what we're doing as far as our identity.
Mhm.
Again, in this actual world that we live, we don't really have to consciously monitor our identity. But
Mhm.
when we're in the virtual world, we do. And so we have to both realize that we have that power to do things new and
Mhm.
to change things, and also to be responsible with it. And not just, it's like cyberbullying, for example, is kind of an irresponsible thing that people do. And, there's also, there's a lot of, people are probably aware there's a lot of negative things that happen on the internet where people are not acting responsibly with this new power that they have. So we
Mhm.
have a lot of power to, again, anonymity, let's means that you don't really have to suffer the consequences of what you do. So we're sort of freed of that, but then, we need to use our own sense of responsibility and values to regulate how we are. So those kind of challenges, things that we take for granted in this world, are not there in the virtual world, which is both, again, back to what John Sewler's disinhibited self. It's both sides. It's both good and bad, and we need to have that kind of awareness about
Mhm.
how we are, and then understanding, how we are in the virtual world compared to how we are in the actual world
Mhm.
can again give us a lot of insights into ourselves.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing in that regards. And on to the next conversation of topic. You kind of did mention a little bit about being consciousness and unconsciousness. And then you said you didn't really talk about what it means to have like a presence though. So besides the emphasis
Hmm.
of the consciousness, what does it mean to be here? And like what ways do your different online environment may feel real to you? And then in what ways will the environment feel like a fantasy? And then why do we
Right.
need as like the public to even recognize this? How important is this to our everyday lives?
Well, again, I think it gives us insights. Like in this world, if I say, oh, here I am in my room, you know what that means.
Mhm.
Um, we have some sense, there's like a physical, we think, well, our physical being, that tells us we're present. But, in cyberspace, it doesn't, we don't need that. So how do I know, what do I mean when I say I'm here with you, Michelle, or I'm here in this webinar? It's a different kind of being here. So it brings up a lot of those kind of issues, kind of those very interesting issues.
Mhm.
And then also, in the actual world, I can really only be in one place at a time, right?
Mhm.
I can't be both, in Los Angeles and San Francisco at the same time. I can't do that in the actual world. But in the virtual world, I can. I can be, if I have multiple screens open, I can be many places. So it's just like, I think it's just really interesting. It challenges some of those fundamental notions that we have about what it means to be here, to be present, to be with somebody. Again, I know what it means to be with someone in the actual world, but
Mhm.
what does it mean to be with someone in the virtual world?
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. So you're basically
And
kind of just sparking notes. It's important to realize what is real and what's not real, if I am not mistaken.
yes,
Mhm.
right. Although real is a fuzzy term,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, it does feel real, and then that kind of brings up the whole idea of relationships.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? In this world, I have to be physically with somebody a lot to have a relationship with them. Um,
Mhm.
but I don't, and we're different in cyberspace, and our relationships are going to be different as well. For instance, in the actual world, there's no such thing as a like, right? But in the virtual world, I can press a button. I can have a button relationship with people where I like them, or I send like little updates, and we don't. That's kind of not, what does it mean to like somebody? That's a kind of sort of a relationship, but we don't know what that means. Those buttons. Um, and
Mhm.
so the digital interactions we have are going to differ from our in-person relationships.
Mhm.
And, they include, of course, the potential for superficiality,
Mhm.
multitasking, and, avoidance of intimacy. I
Mhm.
don't have to reveal much about myself. I can be superficial, multitasking. I can have many relationships going on at once. And then I can avoid intimacy by not even being who I am, right? By creating an identity that's not me. Um,
Mhm.
and then also, kind of in the real world, relationships are embodied, right? We hear, we see, we touch, we feel, but we don't have a lot of that. We don't have those bodies in the digital realm. So we have to. So our relationships are not embodied. So they're going to be a lot different. And a lot of people are wondering, is it possible to have a really, a truly robust, integrated sensory experience with others in cyberspace? So those are a few things. And then, a couple of the questions that we can ask about relationships when we're in cyberspace is, why do I choose to communicate with some people but not others?
Mhm.
Why do I choose to participate in some online groups and not others? How do I make decisions? What role do I play in my relationships? And then what do I or don't I reveal about myself?
Mhm.
Because I don't have to tell you who I am.
Mhm.
So all those, we're making all those choices when we're in the digital world, and they tell us something about ourselves. So it's a very rich place for us to learn about who we are
Mhm.
just by these questions, by like asking ourselves why we're the way we are there.
Mhm.
It's kind of, again, kind of a lot of material for us to process and to think about and to deepen ourselves with.
Right. I see. And thank you so much for using the examples as well. I think that makes hopefully the audience understand a little bit more. And of course, anyone wants to chip in their opinions and their thoughts on it, we would love to hear that as well to kind of open this conversation up. And then onto the next like points that you have researched on your own studies. There is three types of different relationships that you focused on. The first is relationships in cyberspace. The second one is relationships with digital characters. And the third one you researched was that relationships with other human beings in the digital world. So please, Bob, tell us
Mm-hmm.
about these relationships and why it's so important for us to recognize it and to learn more about it.
Well, yes, thank you. Yes, if you think about it, about the kinds of relationships you can have with, or you can have with other human beings,
Mhm.
because again, with in the digital space, you can have relationships with people like yourselves who are participating, but then there are also digital characters, especially with artificial intelligence and all those. Some of those digital characters are capable of sparking kind of emotional reactions in us, right? We can have a psychological experience with a digital character. But kind of back to the other people, right? So if you think about it, there's with other people, the relationships with other people in the digital world. One kind is where we don't know them at all in the actual realm, right? We just have a relationship in the digital realm, um, and then the other kind is where we do know them in the actual world, right? And one is maybe we first knew them in the actual realm, and then we decided to connect digitally, right? Like maybe I have a friend and we decided, oh, let's experiment with Second Life, or let's play this game together, right? So we have a relationship in the actual realm, and now we're trying to moving it into the digital realm. And then the second is the opposite, right? We first knew them in the digital world, and then we decided to meet them. Um, and then that adds up, as if anybody's been on kind of dating sites where you write out your profile, this image that you present digitally, then you meet somebody and you kind of have to live up to your profile. So that's kind of like the um, one aspect to connecting with people. Now, John Suler, who was really an inspiration to me, um, he is very much interested. He advocates an integrated relationships where everybody you try to create a relationship with them both in the actual world and the digital world, right? So your friends who maybe you just relate to, in the actual realm, or your work colleagues, he's suggesting that it's important that you also have a digital relationship with them. And I thought that was very interesting, but kind of back to the fact that we're having psychological experiences in all these places, you can see where it would really add to the richness of your relationship with somebody if you took advantage of all the places that you can connect. Um,
Mhm.
and, and then with the digital characters, a lot of us, if you think about it, sometimes we think, gosh, how can you have a relationship with a digital character? Um, but if you think about it, a lot of us had a deep emotional connection with dolls and stuffed animals, and so the digital characters, I think, kind of tap into that same ability that we have, right? The fact that my stuffed animal was very real to me, and I had conversations, and it soothed me. Um, shows a lot, I think, about our own ability, the flexibility that we have to connect and to have relationships with things. And then some people even prefer fantasy partners,
Mhm.
especially for relationships, because they're a lot easier. Um, One thing that we have to be careful about in the digital realm is, does it expand us or does it narrow us? And by that I mean, if I'm having trouble kind of relating in the actual world, I can go into a digital realm and where the world is different, right? And I don't run those problems. Like, say, everybody loves me, everybody admires me, everybody thinks everything I did was perfect, right? I can go into a world like that, but that narrows me because it lets me avoid something that's happening to me. Now, the opposite is something that expands me, where I go into a world where I change, right? I think it's an interesting distinction to look at is, do I use the digital world to create a different world or to experiment with a different me? And if I use it to create a different world, that could be kind of narrowing me and my experience. If I use it to experiment with different ways of being me, then it expands me, right? So it's kind of like, am I looking to change me or the world? And if I'm looking to change me, then it's a chance for growth. If
Mhm.
I'm looking to change the world so that I don't have to deal with my stuff, then it tends to limit me.
I see, I see. I really like that you pointed out about the virtual relationships because I feel like with the age of like you said, dating apps, a lot of young youths are also prone to being susceptible to having that virtual relationships and not knowing how to like kind of be careful and navigate around that. So those are really good.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm. So it's good. It's again, technology is really good and we can learn a lot, but with the more younger generation having access to technology, it could something be a concern possibly. Okay. Yes, so on to your next slide. So then this one talks a lot about who owns the future. When you say that, are you talking about that individuals should take control of their own life, or are you talking more about that like we should actually be more using technology to incorporate into our daily lives? Or what do you mean by who owns the future?
Well, our psychology, which I think of as the way we make sense of emotional experiences. Um, it's built on our experiences, making sense of emotional experiences, and the design and the purpose of the digital environment is going to influence the psychological experiences we have within them. For instance, if someone spends time in a virtual world where bigotry is rampant, that experience is going to affect them. Perhaps very simplistically, make them kind of more used to bigotry, right, and accept it a little more. So, so we need to ensure that these spaces actually promote psychological well-being and prevent potential harm. But the thing is that online worlds are designed by people for their own purposes, right? So, and so whatever those purposes are, we have to be careful that we know what they are. That the unconscious and the conscious worlds were not designed by people, right? But the digital worlds, they serve some purpose, usually directly or indirectly financial,
Mhm.
right? People, those worlds. So those worlds that are being designed by people for their purposes, that's where we're spending time. And I think that could be very dangerous. Some digital worlds could be full of kind of misinformation or, back to the bigotry or misogyny, things like that. People could create their own worlds where those types of things are accepted. Um, and then that's kind of really could be very harmful for our psychology. So I think there's going to be probably some need for some kind of regulation or rating or just a lot of awareness on our part, knowing that, kind of understanding the motivation of these worlds that we're in, and then bringing that awareness to our experiences.
Mhm. I see. And so basically kind of to summarize this slide, you are basically saying that it is crucial to ensure the well-being and to people, and we can do that by basically advocating for that digital environment.
Yes, I think it's something that's certainly in the future that I think that we're going to have to face.
Okay.
That people are going
Mhm.
to have to face what those are like, and probably there's going to be I don't know whether it's regulation or what's going to what will be it, but we have to face that and do something about it, or it could just turn into more of a cesspool than it can be now.
Right. With that, we do have a question from the audience. Then do you think the aspect of a virtual world will overall have a negative effect on humanity as a whole? So, for example, let's say someone was using it to disassociate or isolate. Would it eventually have a negative impact? Or back to your point, as long as we have those regulations, then it would be fine.
Yeah. Well, technology, I think, is neutral in the sense it can both be used, for the positive and it can be used for the negative.
Mhm.
So a lot of it will depend on the awareness that people bring into it and the amount of reflection that they do on what's happening to them.
Mhm.
I do think that if you spend a lot of time in virtual worlds, kind of without thinking, right, and without kind of wondering what's going on, that it can be kind of risky because you're not going to be aware of what's happening to you. But if you can reflect on them and just kind of get a little bit ahead of myself, we're starting a group at Naru's for like people for computer gamers, people who are in these role-playing games to help them get used to thinking about what's happening.
Mhm.
So as long as you think about what's going on in your life, which is probably not a lot different than what we have to do in the actual world, right? If you go through the actual world just really oblivious, not reflecting on what you do and what you've said to people and how things make you feel and how you make people feel and how somebody reacted. If you don't do any reflection about your life in the actual world, it's not going to be that nice. You're not going to be that fulfilled, and you're probably not going to be that much of an asset to other people. So it's really the same with online worlds. They seem a lot different, but generally it's the same thing. We need to think about what we're doing, and the more you think about what you're doing and reflect on what you're doing in the digital worlds, the healthier they'll be. So it depends a lot. We have a lot of power over what our experience is.
I love that you ended with that, with the we have a lot of power with our own experiences. What's power though? I hate to talk about the financial aspect of having power, but you did mention on your slide that online worlds are purposely designed with financial motives. So even though your
Mhm.
overall statement is that it can do us good if we utilize it well, but what do you mean by financial motives? Is it because people creating these online worlds just want to tap into people's like financial aspect, or what else do you mean by that?
Well, let's say that Coca-Cola designed an online world. That was really cool. Well, but we know that they would have designed it to sort of get us interested in Coca-Cola, right? Subtly, just like advertisements do. And
Mhm.
so again, if we're aware of when we watch an advertisement, if we just accept it, if watch an advertisement in the actual world, if we just accept what it says, um, we're we're not going to have a lot of power, and we will soon be separated from our money. Right? We're going to go out and buy a lot of that stuff. But if we can be somewhat aware, like when we see this, we know that they have that motive, right? It's always good if you're aware of the motives of the people that you're interacting with or the advertisements or whatever. So I think, again, it's with these online worlds, if we can be aware of what their motives are, then we can kind of see those motives and kind of disempower them and then benefit from the positive parts of it, right? So it's kind of back to the technology. There's kind of good parts to it, healthy parts and unhealthy parts to
Mhm.
this. And as long as we can be in tune and sensitive to the unhealthy parts and kind of protect ourselves from those, mainly with awareness, then I think we can navigate these worlds. But if we just accept everything that's said unconsciously, don't think about it, then we really will be at their mercy, which usually means spending money.
I see. Well, thank you so much for explaining that. And then on to the next point that you said. So this one talks about a new psychology. And then you posed a question on the
Mhm.
slides where it says, how do you feel about the concept of a digital self? And do you think it's a separate entity or an extension of your real self? And how does it integrate towards like impact on personality disorder, values, and especially mental health? Like, why does that matter?
Why does it matter that why does the digital world matter for all that?
Mhm.
I think,
So why does it matter overall? And is it like an extension of yourself? Is that why it matters?
well, yes, because it is yourself. People, you may have noticed that I've been trying to use the term actual world instead of real world, right? Because there is as kind of the terminology that a lot of times is used is that there's the real world, meaning this, physical world that we're in, and then there's these virtual worlds that are not exactly real. But my point would be that they're both real. Right? We have real experiences in them both. So that who we are in the digital world is us, right?
Mhm.
It's not us. It's really a manifestation of who we are, and that's why it's so important that we can integrate that and integrate it into who we are, right? So that our whole self is composed of our digital selves and our actual self. But we need kind of a whole new way of thinking about this because, back to the fact that used to be these two worlds, these two realms only, the conscious and the unconscious. Well, the psychology of dreams and fantasy is a lot different than the psychologies of behavior, right? You may be familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That
Mhm.
that has some efficacy in the actual world, but it's not something you would use to understand dreams, right? And so we have a different psychology for both of those, and because those realms are so different, and so the unique qualities and challenges of the digital world that I've been trying to talk about, they necessitate the development of a new psychology to understand our behaviors and experience in that. Just like we have a psychology for the conscious realm and a psychology for the unconscious realm, and they're different. We need a psychology for this. We need to experience to understand how things like embodiment, communication, and social dynamics, how are they different in cyberspace, and
Yeah.
then understanding how they're going to how like personality disorders and overall mental health manifest. Right? What is it like? Somebody's a we throw out these terms. Like a narcissist. Well, what does a narcissist look like in the digital realm? What does paranoia look like in a digital realm? So these are all things that we want to understand because those are basic human emotions manifesting in a different way, and so we need to kind of understand that. As a therapist, which I am, and possibly some people in the audience are, we've got to understand that because that's where our clients are spending more and more time.
Mhm.
And if we just try to minimize their experiences there, well, that's not real.
Mhm.
Then we lose out on a lot of opportunity to help them. Right? They're going into these digital worlds where I hope I've explained some of the challenges there. And so as therapists, we need to understand it so that we can help our clients make sense of that. And
Mhm.
then as individuals, the same impulse that makes somebody curious about the way they are in the actual world, is probably going to make them curious about the way they are in the virtual world.
Mhm.
We have, in psychology, in therapy, we have we have a process group, right, where you process your experience in the actual world. And so we need things like that, whatever whatever the correspondent thing is in the digital realm. We need something like that. And I'm not saying, I think I'm not saying that it's going to be the same thing. That a process group in the digital realm is going to be the same as a process group in the actual realm, or even that the term process group might be different. For instance, this computer gaming group that we're starting. What I'm realizing is we're probably going to be spending time in those digital realms. I mean, that's not something that we do with, in the actual world when you're in a group. You don't spend time in the digital realm, or you don't even spend time out in the actual world, right? You stay in that group, whether it's Zoom or a physical group. But
Mhm.
the way that we help people understand their psychology in the digital realm, I think it's going to be a lot different, and it's something that's for me is exciting to discover. I'd have to say, I hardly know anything about the digital realm. I don't think I'm alone. I think very few of us do. And so it's an exciting new place that to explore and to discover. So it's kind of like I think of people who are in the who spend a lot of time in the digital world. I think of
Mhm.
them as psychological pioneers because they're having experiences in both the actual and the digital realm, and which is where we're all headed. And
Mhm.
they're trying to make sense of that. So it's exciting to me to be able to work with people who are psychological pioneers.
Mhm. I like that. I like how you ended the statement with, at the end of the day, we're all here to learn and work together to discover new concepts of things. I like that. So on to with that,
Mm-hmm.
you did mention about a peer support group, and you did mention that he is correct at the News Clinic Foundation. Not only do we have a computer gaming group, we have 10 other really special, unique peer support groups. But in terms of this one, for this specific webinar, Bob, you mentioned that on your slides that the computer gaming group is similar to Black Mirror. Explain to us a little bit more what Black Mirror is and why should be noting the concept of Black Mirror and how does it relate back to a computer gaming group?
Well, yeah, I was just struck, people may be familiar with the TV series, The Black Mirror. And I think that the group is going to be similar to that because both Black Mirror and the group were both exploring really the potential social and psychological impacts of technology. I think our time frames are different, right? Black Mirror speculates about where technology is going to lead us, and they had those. That's what their episodes are about. And our group is curious really about what's going on now with
Mhm.
technology. So there's just a little difference in the time frame. And then another thing is, although each episode of Black Mirror has a distinct kind of technological premise,
Mhm.
right? An ongoing thread in Black Mirror is the digital virtual. And so we're really going to be focused. We are focused on the digital virtual. Um, and again, I think we're going to be less gloomy. The Black Mirror sort of looks, I think, more at the dystopian side of technology. But we're going to look at both the positive and the negative. But back to the Nehru's motto of stigma free, right? That's what we're bringing to the digital life is stigma free, a stigma free exploration of people's lives in the digital realm.
I love that you tied it back together. And also, in a side note, I personally really like Black Mirror. Each episode has its own, I guess, theme to it that is very specific towards life. But overall, like what Bob says, it does explore like how technology can potentially ruin or better the society, but as long as we again understand how we can better lives with it, it can definitely improve our mental health with it. And Bob is the one facilitating the computer gaming group, and the time on the flyer is it's actually going to be changed, but the QR code does take you to a peer interest form. It's completely free to the public to join this group. And again, if you do join it, it again does help with our model of a stigma-free world. And we want to make virtual reality, computer gaming technology a very destigmatized topic and kind of make sure everyone that is or into it kind of comes together in the community and to kind of talk to other like-minded individuals about this. And with that, Bob, is there
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to tell people about the computer gaming group or more about why should they join this group and kind of like to wrap up your overall findings of the whole conversation we were just having?
Yeah, no, and I would say, I put my email address, bob.r@nehruclinic.com in the chat, because if you are interested, in learning more about this group, what it will be like, and whether that would resonate with you, or you're kind of interested in cyber psychology, please contact me, and then I can kind of keep you I can keep you up to date on what's going on with both the group and the cyber psychology. Um, and, just I guess one thing to emphasize, an important measure of psychological health, what we call wholeness and integration. Wholeness means that every part of us has a place in our sense of self. And integration means that those parts all talk and are informed by other parts, right? So I think we need a way to integrate and become as thoughtful about our online experiences as we are about our actual experiences.
Mhm.
And then we need to use kind of those apparent discrepancies to learn more about ourselves and deepen our understanding of each other. So, um, so I think, again, back to that group, I think the reason to, if you want to join that group, if you want to get a deeper understanding of your virtual life, if you've been in other kinds of support groups and found them useful, you would probably find this useful. Our goal really is to become psychologically curious about what's going on in the digital realm.
Mhm.
And so just like you might join a group to get insights into your life in this actual world, this is a support group to help you get insights in your digital life, right? So this is a group for the curious.
I absolutely love that. So
So that's
again,
about it.
thank you, Bob, for sharing. And again, if you guys are interested in this computer game one, or even if you're not interested in this computer game one, there is other peer support groups that might be of interest. But again, we do have this one. If you do scan the QR code, it'll definitely lead you more into information about that. So with that, Bob, thank you so much for sharing your insights. We do just have one more thing, part of the Ruse Clinic Foundation. So we are very proud to share with the public our 9th annual Unlocking Stigma Fair. So what Bob kind of said about how we do try our best to make it a stigma-free world. Another way we do that is to kind of destigmatize mental health, and that is our whole mission statement. With that, we do have a fair that we host on every year. This usually attracts around like 300 participants, over 40 vendors, and these vendors are different community resources in the community. It's completely free to attend, free parking, complimentary food, free raffles, fun games. Bob might even show up. So if you guys want to, meet him in real life or even not, there's email technology that you can definitely talk to him afterwards this conversation. But again, it's at a no cost event. We do ask that people do register using like QR code just so you can gauge how many people is going to come. But if you don't register, you still want to come, perfectly okay. It's going to be Saturday, April 27th from 11 to 3 p.m. So again, it'll be a very, very fun time that you can come meet our staff and other community resources in the community. And then just a Q&A. If you guys have any questions to Bob or to myself about the News Clinic Foundation, about his work, please feel free to ask right now. Email us, email Bob, whatever you guys are comfortable with. We will welcome that to the floor. But then again, thank you so much, Bob, for sharing your insights and your expertise on this topic.
Sure, and thanks for talking with me, Michelle, and thank you to everybody who came to the webinar.
Mhm.
I hope to hear from some of you.
We'll stay on until maybe like 2, but again, if you guys are not comfortable with asking the question, Bob put his email in the chat. I will copy and paste the email just in case it got lost on the top, and I did put my email on the bottom. But again, thank you so much everyone for staying all the way until the end, and we really appreciate Sarah, Dami, Jess, Tito, Delina, Natalia, Janira, Ashley for coming. And I know other people had left early, but they did Bob, the people left early, they actually did email me asking for the slides and videos. I'm very glad that it found some people
Great.
useful for it. Mm. But again, thank you so much, and stay tuned for the possible next month webinar as well. Every month we do have a speaker talk about anything as long as it relates to mental health. So if you yourself or anyone you know that would like to become a speaker, definitely contact me with that. But thank you so much, everyone, and I'll just stay on until
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dami.
Thank you.
Uh, Hi, Delana. Hi, Janira. Did you guys have a question or anything? Also, thank you so much for joining us.
I have sort of a request. If
Mhm.
anybody would be willing to put in the chat, if you do play computer games,
Mhm.
kind of the games, some of your favorites, I'd be interested in finding that out if you're willing to share that.
And if in the email that I'm gonna send everyone, I can ask that if I do remember. Right now, we do have 2 people that's staying on right now, but we did have a
Hmm.
solid 15 people attend, and it seemed very, very interesting. And again, Bob, this will be eventually posted on YouTube. We do want all of our other webinars and speakers to be posted on there too. So that's something we are working on. But if Delina and Janira does not have a question, I will go ahead and end this now. But Bob, I will definitely follow up with the follow-up email. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to become a speaker, and high hopes for this gaming group or peer support group. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited to like
yeah, we're excited.
passions for it.
Okay, great. All right, well, Michelle, thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, of course. And then I will talk to you soon. So have a wonderful day, Bob.
All right, okay, bye-bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.